Your story, our station.
If you've ever felt trapped in that endless top 40 loop, you know the feeling. Same songs, same sounds, same safe choices. Like the world hit repeat and lost the button to try something new. Today, I want to introduce you to a crew that's built to do the exact opposite. Change the station entirely. Bullet End Flight is based right in the heart of the 505, Albuquerque, where the green chili runs hot and the creative energy somehow runs even hotter. And when I say Bullet End Flight, I'm not talking about one single project or one single vibe. Think of it more like a parent company to a whole family of artistic misfits. People who don't fit neatly into the usual boxes, and honestly, don't want to. At the center of everything is a mission that's pretty simple to say, but not always easy to pull off. Elevate the voices that usually get talked over. The artists who get labeled too niche, or too different, or that weird one, too Albuquerque. Whatever that's supposed to mean. If you've ever heard something like that about your work, this is your invitation to pull up a chair. Because that's not a deal breaker here. That's the whole point. Bullet End Flight is built around inclusivity, creative community building, and giving underrepresented artists the megaphone they deserve. Not as a trend, not as a marketing angle, but as the core identity. It's a response to a creative world that can feel gated, filtered, and overly polished, where the most interesting voices get told to tone it down so they can be easier to sell. And here's where it gets fun. Bullet End Flight doesn't believe in staying in one lane. Because why would you? Why drive a sedan when you could take a spaceship? The whole approach is more like, what does human expression look like across every format? And then going after all of it. Let's start with music, because that's a major part of the DNA. The mindset here isn't pick a genre and stay in it. It's more like, what's the vibe and does it hit? That can mean the spiritual charge of gospel, the late-night pulse of house music, the smooth storytelling and emotion of R&B, or even that classic country charm where life falls apart but somehow the drink is still cold. It's not about fitting into a category. It's about making something that feels alive. But it doesn't stop at music. There's a strong dedication to the spoken word too. Podcasts that get into the real stuff, not just surface-level chatter, and poetry that doesn't play nice. The kind that lands heavy, the kind that says what people avoid saying, the kind that reminds you words can still be dangerous in the best way. Then there's film and TV writing. Getting into scripts that actually have a heartbeat. Not another recycled reboot of a reboot. Not something designed by committee to offend the fewest people possible. The focus is on stories with soul. Stories with perspective. Stories that sound like they came from real lives, in real places, with real edges. And of course, the stage. Because there is nothing like live performance. It's unpredictable, it's electric, and yeah, anything can happen. And usually does. The stage is where art stops being an idea and becomes a moment, right in front of people who can feel it in real time. So why would an artist want to plug into something like this? Because being a starving artist has been romanticized for way too long, and it doesn't need to be the default. And being a lonely artist, trying to build everything by yourself, with no village, no network, no support, That's even worse. Bullet and Flight is about building that village on purpose. The goal is to take the talent that's been brewing in the Southwest, often overlooked, often underestimated, and project it outward. Not in a please notice us kind of way, but in a we're already here, and we're bringing the whole sound with us kind of way. Bullet and Flight positions itself as a launch pad, a safety net, and the hype you didn't realize you were missing. And let's be honest, a lot of people are tired of gatekeepers. Tired of needing permission. Tired of feeling like they have to sand down everything interesting about their work to be taken seriously. If that's you, this is a space that's built for finding your tribe. People who want loud, weird, real art, and who aren't afraid to make it together. If you want to get in the mix, Deombase is https://just-dominic. And if you want the visuals, you can find the YouTube channel at Just Dominic Music. Bullet and Flight Music, LLC is the company behind it all. And the invitation is open. Check out what's being built, listen to what's coming out, and if you're ready to change the station, this is a good place to start.
Inside Out on Bullet and Flight Radio. Real discussions with mental wellness professionals.
Welcome back to Bullet and Flight Radio, your story, our station. Today we're jumping into a topic that's easy to recognize in the modern workplace, but fascinating when you see how far back it goes: the games men play, and specifically, male bonding.
This episode is built around a historical case from Sweden in the first half of the 20th century, at a moment when Swedish industry was booming. Iron, steel, mining, engineering, electrification, big corporations, big fortunes, and a very male top layer of society running it all. And when these men weren't in the boardroom, they often met each other somewhere else. Not casually, not just for a drink now and then, but in organized spaces that helped them build alliances, status, and a shared idea of what it meant to be the right kind of man.
The example we're exploring is a private hunting fraternity with an unforgettable name, the King Black Grouse Hunting Society. And yes, it was exactly as theatrical as it sounds. These were businessmen who didn't just hunt. They role-played. They built a world with its own language, ranks, rituals, and rules. They bonded through a shared fantasy, and that fantasy shaped power relationships between men, across generations, and even shaped how women were talked about and treated at the edges of the group.
So here's the big question that guides the whole story: when men bond closely in exclusive spaces, what gets created besides friendship? And what happens when a new generation of men tries to step into a fraternity that runs on hierarchy, tradition, and an old script of masculinity?
To understand why this matters, it helps to zoom out for a second. Sweden is often associated with welfare policies and social equality today, but in the early 1900s it was also a place where heavy industry was reshaping society fast. Technological advances pushed companies forward, and corporate leaders became powerful figures. Many of them were part of an elite social world that revolved around men spending time with men, forming networks that were informal but hugely consequential.
Researchers often describe male bonding as a kind of learned, institutional behavior. It's not just friendship. It can be a practice you pick up and perform in order to belong, and, importantly, in order to gain access to opportunities and privileges. And it can also quietly generate exclusion. There's a reason people study homosocial spaces, meaning spaces organized around same-sex relationships, usually men favoring men. Those settings can stabilize power, spread norms, and create insider language that tells you who's in and who's out.
In this Swedish case, male bonding isn't treated like a harmless side hobby. It's treated as something that produces gender, meaning it helps build and reinforce ideas about masculinity, status, and control. That's why the hunting club is such a revealing example. It shows masculinity being practiced as ritual, as performance, and as a resource in business life.
Now, the concept that helps frame this is homosociality. It's a term originally introduced to describe social bonds between people of the same sex. Over time, scholars have used it to talk about how men create networks that often reproduce what's sometimes called hegemonic masculinity, the dominant form of masculinity in a given era. But homosociality can also involve emotion, desire for approval, even closeness that tiptoes near aligned men are taught to police. Researchers have pointed out there can be anxiety here. The closeness has to stay safe, and that safety is often enforced with jokes, insults, and the constant performance of heterosexuality.
So male bonding can look like camaraderie, but it can also look like competition, control, and the creation of a pecking order. And in hierarchies, not all men benefit equally. Older and younger men can clash. Men with less status can be kept in their place. And women can be invoked as props or targets in ways that cement male solidarity.
The research behind this case uses a biographical approach. That means instead of treating the club as an abstract thing, it tries to reconstruct the lives and connections of the individuals involved, who the members were, what companies they led, who they were married to, which families were intertwined, who had access to land, who had the right kind of social capital. Biographical work is slow, and it can be messy. You can't interview the past, and in this case all members were already dead. But what you can do is read what they left behind.
And what they left behind is unusually rich: the club's own books and notes, plus correspondence between members. These documents include reports of hunting trips, poems, stories, nicknames, and a lot of larger-than-life writing. Sometimes the hunt is described like myth. Sometimes the men write themselves like great leaders. But instead of dismissing that as exaggeration, the analysis treats the flamboyance as data. Because how men choose to tell the story often reveals what kind of masculinity they value and want to display.
The sources also make something else clear: the club didn't just record events. It produced a narrative about itself. A mythology. And that mythology shaped behavior.
Let's talk about what it meant to join. The King Black Grouse Hunting Society wasn't just a hunting group. It functioned like a fraternity with ranks. Newcomers started at the bottom with a humiliating label, not even a bird at first, but a fantasy creature, a kind of hybrid animal. The idea was simple: you earn your way up by fitting in, tolerating the joking, accepting the rituals, and proving you're able to take it.
The central theme was the black grouse bird. In nature, the male black grouse displays dramatically during mating season. It raises its tail feathers, makes distinctive sounds, struts, and competes while females watch. The club borrowed that imagery and turned it into a whole identity system. The men called themselves black grouse males, and women were referred to as hens. Members talked about their nest instead of home, their feathers instead of bodies, and they used bird-related language as an inside code.
That might sound silly, but that's the point. In a boardroom, these men had to act controlled, rational, professional. In the forest, they gave themselves permission to be crude, childish, indulgent. They portrayed the club as liberation from convention, as an escape from the stiff rules of respectable society.
And that escape served multiple purposes. First, it was a break from domestic life. The club created a male-only zone where men didn't have to talk about childcare, household responsibilities, or the emotional labor of family life. Instead, their world was built from guns, hunting dogs, alcohol, and storytelling. These objects weren't neutral, they were symbols that helped build a particular masculine atmosphere.
Second, the black grouse identity let them experiment with a different masculine self. A member even admitted the meetings were too comfortable, too indulgent, the drinking went too far, the food was excessive, the whole thing had a patriarchal feel. It was like a private playground for men who were otherwise responsible for huge organizations.
Third, the bird fantasy also reinforced a gender division. In their story world, males compete and display, females watch, nurture, and stay close to the nest. That mirrors a traditional breadwinner and housewife model, and for this elite group it fit the reality of many marriages at the time: men in public work, women expected to handle home life.
So the club's bonding didn't just reflect gender norms. It actively repeated them, joked about them, and turned them into a shared script.
Membership also wasn't open. You didn't just sign up because you liked hunting. You needed recommendation, you needed status, and you often needed connection. Many members came through corporate networks. If you entered the orbit of a major company, you might get an invitation. Family ties mattered too, fathers recruiting sons, brothers recruiting brothers. That kind of recruitment tends to reproduce sameness. Men choose men who remind them of themselves. That's a classic homosocial pattern.
Another factor was land. Access to woodlands could make you attractive to the club because it expanded where the group could hunt. In practice, that meant capital was a gatekeeper. Property and prestige weren't separate from leisure, they shaped who could belong.
And then there were the rituals, including an initiation ceremony with a made-up name, designed to scare and humiliate a newcomer. The message was clear: if you want to become one of us, you accept our code. You tolerate roughness. You don't complain. You prove your toughness by submitting to the group.
This is where male bonding and hierarchy meet. It's brotherhood, but it's also discipline. A fraternity can offer warmth and belonging, but it can also enforce conformity through ridicule and fear of exclusion. Now let's go deeper into the kind of language and behavior that held the group together. In many male homosocial environments, bonding happens through shared idioms, nicknames, swearing, teasing, and inside jokes. We see all of that here.
Every member had a nickname, often linked to personality or reputation. A famous banker was called the Crocodile, partly because he was known for dozing at his desk. A prominent industrial leader was the President. These labels mattered. They created a parallel identity system inside the club, separate from official job titles. It was a kind of role play, and role play can be powerful because it changes how people relate to each other.
Close bonding also showed up in emotional letters. Some older men were quite open about feelings in writing, which challenges the stereotype that elite businessmen were always emotionally closed off. But here's the twist. The same environment that allowed emotion also demanded constant proof of acceptable masculinity.
That's where women come in, even when they aren't physically present. The documents show that the club praised the love of a brother, but again and again the men also insisted on their ability to seduce women. Why? Because in tight male spaces, intimacy can trigger anxiety about being seen as too close, too soft, too vulnerable, or, in their worldview, too close to homosexuality. One way men stabilize that anxiety is by loudly performing heterosexuality.
So in this club, heterosexual bragging became glue. They wrote poems and stories painting members as womanizers, as Don Juans, as irresistible to women. Wives were referenced as potential objects of flirtation in joking ways, and the humor could be cruel. The point wasn't necessarily accurate reporting. The point was reinforcing a norm: we are men who desire women, and women desire us.
At the same time, the male bonding included physical affection. Photographs show men touching, hugging, even playful contact that in another setting might be read as intimate. In the homosocial bubble, bodily closeness was permitted, even encouraged, as long as the group kept the right framing around it. And that framing often included homophobic jokes or constant heterosexual references to keep the boundary clear.
This is a pattern scholars have described. Sexual talk among men can build camaraderie, but it can also slide into misogyny and harassment. It's not just dirty jokes. It can normalize the reduction of women to objects used for male entertainment and male bonding.
One striking example from the club's materials involves a ceremonial book presented to a leader. Instead of treating it as a serious gift, the moment was sexualized with a metaphor comparing the act of opening the sealed book to entering the hymen of a virgin. That tells you a lot, doesn't it? It shows how easily women's bodies could be used as metaphors inside male bonding, even in a context where women weren't present. It also shows how the group's humor depended on objectification.
And beyond talk, there were pranks and behavior that leaned into a deliberately boyish atmosphere: crude bodily jokes, swearing, even nudity when swimming. The hunt itself was framed as a theatrical pursuit of wild beasts, and the men drank heavily. At least once, they even shot a domestic cat by mistake instead of a wild animal, which says something uncomfortable about recklessness inside a culture of bravado.
So the club was an escape, yes, but it was also a machine for producing a certain kind of masculinity, indulgent, competitive, crude, status-aware, and rule-bound.
Now let's shift to the most important tension in this story: what happens when generations collide inside a masculine hierarchy?
The club existed for decades. Over time, the original members aged. Recruiting younger men became necessary for survival. But bringing in younger members also changed the chemistry, because the bonding culture wasn't automatically shared by people raised in a different era.
Younger members didn't always enjoy the older men's uncensored jokes and pranks. To the younger generation, some rituals looked outdated, or just embarrassing. And from the perspective of the older men, the younger ones were lacking something: ambition to enjoy life properly, willingness to submit to tradition, patience for the old scripts.
And here's where hierarchy got sharp. In this club, age often outranked professional position. A man could be powerful in business, a high-level manager, and still be treated as a child in the club. Middle-aged recruits were mocked as chicks or grouse fry, basically newborns in the club's internal world. Even highly respected men were put through a symbolic downgrade to teach them their place. That kind of ritualized belittling does more than tease. It disciplines. It controls. It turns male bonding into a system where older men protect their dominance by keeping younger men subordinate.
And the language used for younger men was revealing. They were portrayed as shy, weak, careful. The insinuation was that youth equals softness, and softness equals insufficient masculinity. Even marital status could be weaponized. Unmarried men could be mocked as impotent, or not properly masculine. The group enforced a narrow definition of manhood: heterosexual, married or at least sexually successful, willing to tolerate roughness, willing to obey seniority.
Of course, the broader context was changing too. After World War II, Sweden shifted politically and socially. The Social Democrats built a welfare state, and for conservative businessmen, that could feel like a threat. At least one prominent leader worried in letters that the working class was gaining too much freedom, able to go to the cinema, take vacations, live more comfortably. Even leisure was politicized in his mind.
Work itself changed as well. Managerial jobs became more professionalized and demanding, often requiring more education and more continuous attention. By the 1950s and 60s, some younger corporate leaders simply didn't have the same leisure patterns as their predecessors. The old-style hunting fraternity didn't fit their schedules or their values. So the club's decline wasn't just because people got older. It was because the rituals were tied to a particular moment in history, a moment when elite men had time, cultural permission, and a shared script for masculine leisure. Younger men still bonded, still hunted, still networked, but not necessarily through pretending to be birds in the forest. Male bonding didn't disappear. It evolved.
And that evolution opened the door, slowly, to something else the club struggled with: the presence of women.
Traditionally, fraternities promise a women-free space, a place where men can be men without interruption. Many studies show that men can feel provoked when women enter their informal bonding environments, because women are seen as interruptions to intimacy, or threats to the masculine atmosphere, or reminders of norms and responsibilities they'd rather escape.
In the King Black Grouse Hunting Society, women were sometimes allowed at dinners, but they rarely joined hunts. When women were included, it was often framed through the club's role play. Invitations might mention attending with or without a hen. Women were linguistically positioned as attachments to men, supporting roles rather than equal participants.
And the sources suggest that wives often didn't like what the men did on these trips: the late-night drinking, the endless stories, the crude joking. Some members even wanted to restrict women's access to expeditions because complaints from wives threatened the men's freedom. At one point, the club tried to appease wives with gifts, presenting crystal vases as a kind of peace offering. That alone tells you how this leisure culture collided with domestic expectations. The men were carving out time for themselves, and women were left to manage the consequences.
Still, women weren't entirely absent from the club's world. Family and marriage ties were threaded through membership. Daughters married members. Foster children married into the network. Corporate and social life blended together. The club was a social web.
And then there's the most unusual development of all. A woman eventually became a member.
Her name was Marianne Wallenberg, married to Marcus Wallenberg, part of the powerful Wallenberg banking dynasty. Marianne came from aristocratic circles and had already lived a very public life. She enjoyed hunting and began participating in expeditions. At first, in club language, she was framed in relation to her husband, basically the crocodile's wife. Over time, she got her own nickname, a feminized or altered version of Marcus's name, and eventually the men started calling her sister, claiming she was equal among brothers. But let's be careful here. Being called equal doesn't mean being treated as equal. The men described her in glowing terms: smart, attractive, tolerant, almost mythic, comparing her to a hunting goddess whose favor they depended on. And of course she also became sexualized, immediately, in the way women often were in the club's discourse, as a symbol rather than simply a person.
Marianne, though, didn't entirely accept the role assigned to her. One of the most memorable moments is when she hosted a dinner for the club and served black grouse as the meal. Think about the symbolic shock of that. These men built an identity around being black grouse. Then a woman places their symbol on a plate, as food, and refuses to explain exactly where she got it or how she killed it.
In gender terms, it's easy to see why the men were rattled. The grouse wasn't just a bird, it was their masculine emblem, their shared soulmate, their ritual identity. Serving it up as dinner could feel like mockery, like reversal of control, like a challenge to the entire fantasy. She set the rules for once, and they had to react.
Even so, she wasn't formally made a member until 1956, when the club was already fading. That timing matters. Her inclusion seems linked to the club's struggle to recruit new men. After her membership, no more women joined, and no new men joined either. It's as if the society opened for a woman only when it was running out of male successors.
And there's another revealing twist. The longtime president wanted Marianne to become the next president after him. Was that progressive? Was it desperation? Was it admiration for her status and capability? The sources can't give a final answer. But the fact that the offer was made tells us how fragile the club had become, and how much the leader wanted to preserve it, even if that meant breaking the old gender rules.
Marianne declined. And without fresh recruits willing to perform the rituals, the fraternity's core mechanism failed. A male bonding institution like this depends on renewal. Bring in younger men, make them submit, make them learn the language, make them cherish the traditions, and make them carry it forward. Once the younger generation stops buying the script, the show ends.
So what do we take from this story?
First, it's a vivid reminder that male bonding in elite business contexts is not just social. It can be a pathway to building influence, trust, and social capital. The club helped men connect, share access, and sometimes even secure professional opportunities. Informal leisure and formal business were intertwined.
Second, the case shows how masculinity isn't a fixed thing. It's performed, negotiated, and reshaped through rituals, jokes, hierarchies, and group expectations. The idea of multiple masculinities helps here. Not all men acted the same, and the generation gap mattered. Older men defended traditions, younger men often wanted different forms of leisure and different ways of being men.
Third, it shows how homosocial spaces can generate inequality among men themselves. Even if everyone in the club is male, the distribution of respect isn't equal. Age-based hierarchy disciplined younger men. Mockery and degradation maintained the senior men's authority. This is important because we sometimes talk about men as a single advantaged group, but within male spaces, power is still sorted and enforced.
Fourth, it demonstrates how women can be central to male bonding even when they are absent. Women were frequently reduced to objects of desire or domestic helpers in the narrative. Jokes and metaphors sexualized women to strengthen bonds between men. And when women entered the space, the men managed their presence carefully, sometimes resisting it, sometimes using it to energize the male collective.
And finally, it shows that historical context matters. The club's decline wasn't simply personal or accidental. It reflected changes in Swedish society, in work demands, in political climate, and in generational attitudes toward leisure and masculinity. Homosociality didn't disappear, but its form shifted.
The King Black Grouse Hunting Society is an extreme and strangely humorous example on the surface, but it carries a serious lesson. The private spaces where powerful men relax can also be the spaces where power gets reproduced, where norms get reinforced, where younger men learn what kind of masculinity is rewarded, where women are turned into symbols, and where the lines between bonding, control, and exclusion blur. If we want to understand why business cultures look the way they do today, it's worth paying attention not only to boardrooms and policies, but also to after-hours rituals and formal networks, and the stories men tell each other when they think nobody else is listening. That's it for this episode of Bullet in Flight Radio, your story, our station. Keep asking what's being built in the spaces that call themselves just friendly. Because history shows those spaces can shape far more than friendships.
Inside Out on Bullet in Flight Radio. Real discussions with mental wellness professionals.
If you've ever felt trapped in that endless top 40 loop, you know the feeling. Same songs, same sounds, same safe choices. Like the world hit repeat and lost the button to try something new. Today, I want to introduce you to a crew that's built to do the exact opposite. Change the station entirely. Bullet in Flight is based right in the heart of the 505, Albuquerque, where the green chili runs hot and the creative energy somehow runs even hotter. And when I say Bullet in Flight, I'm not talking about one single project or one single vibe. Think of it more like a parent company to a whole family of artistic misfits. People who don't fit neatly into the usual boxes, and honestly, don't want to. At the center of everything is a mission that's pretty simple to say, but not always easy to pull off. Elevate the voices that usually get talked over. The artists who get labeled too niche, or too different, or that weird one, too Albuquerque. Whatever that's supposed to mean. If you've ever heard something like that about your work, this is your invitation to pull up a chair. Because that's not a deal breaker here. That's the whole point. Bullet in Flight is built around inclusivity, creative community building, and giving underrepresented artists the megaphone they deserve. Not as a trend, not as a marketing angle, but as the core identity. It's a response to a creative world that can feel gated, filtered, and overly polished, where the most interesting voices get told to tone it down so they can be easier to sell. And here's where it gets fun. Bullet in Flight doesn't believe in staying in one lane. Because why would you? Why drive a sedan when you could take a spaceship? The whole approach is more like, what does human expression look like across every format? And then going after all of it. Let's start with music, because that's a major part of the DNA. The mindset here isn't pick a genre and stay in it. It's more like, what's the vibe, and does it hit? That can mean the spiritual charge of gospel, the late-night pulse of house music, the smooth storytelling and emotion of R&B, or even that classic country charm where life falls apart but somehow the drink is still cold. It's not about fitting into a category. It's about making something that feels alive. But it doesn't stop at music. There's a strong dedication to the spoken word too. Podcasts that get into the real stuff, not just surface-level chatter, and poetry that doesn't play nice. The kind that lands heavy, the kind that says what people avoid saying, the kind that reminds you words can still be dangerous in the best way. Then there's film and TV writing. Getting into scripts that actually have a heartbeat. Not another recycled reboot of a reboot. Not something designed by committee to offend the fewest people possible. The focus is on stories with soul. Stories with perspective. Stories that sound like they came from real lives, in real places, with real edges. And of course, the stage.
Because there is nothing like live performance.
It's unpredictable, it's electric, and yeah, anything can happen. And usually does. The stage is where art stops being an idea and becomes a moment, right in front of people who can feel it in real time. So why would an artist want to plug into something like this? Because being a starving artist has been romanticized for way too long, and it doesn't need to be the default. And being a lonely artist, trying to build everything by yourself, with no village, no network, no support, that's even worse. Bullet and Flight is about building that village on purpose. The goal is to take the talent that's been brewing in the Southwest, often overlooked, often underestimated, and project it outward. Not in a please notice us kind of way, but in a we're already here, and we're bringing the whole sound with us kind of way. Bullet and Flight positions itself as a launch pad, a safety net, and the hype you didn't realize you were missing. And let's be honest, a lot of people are tired of gatekeepers. Tired of needing permission. Tired of feeling like they have to sand down everything interesting about their work to be taken seriously. If that's you, this is a space that's built for finding your tribe. People who want loud, weird, real art, and who aren't afraid to make it together.
If you want to get in the mix, the home base is https://justdominic.
And if you want the visuals, you can find the YouTube channel at @justdominic music. Bullet and Flight Music, LLC is the company behind it all. And the invitation is open. Check out what's being built, listen to what's coming out, and if you're ready to change the station, this is a good place to start.
Bullet and Flight, fly. Bullet and Flight, fly. Bullet and Flight. Bullet and Flight. Bullet and Flight. Fly. Bullet and Flight. Fly. Your story, our station.